Hi, everyone. So happy you can join me today. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be sharing some content online. And so you may see me bounce back and forth a little bit, looking confused as I, navigate the different technology to make this happen. So I appreciate your patience. Thank you so much for your understanding. I'm going to begin today by sharing with you a passage from the Tanisho. And the Tanisho's rough translation to English is a lament and divergences. And just to give you a little bit of context, our founder of our tradition, Jodo Shinshu, Shinran Shonin, he lived to the ripe old age of 90 years old. He passed away in 1263. And even though Shinran had many, many followers, after he passed away, those followers sometimes got a little confused about the teachings and maybe needed some assistance, clarifying things. And without their teacher, it made it difficult. However, one of Shinran's principal followers, his name is Yuyan Bo, he actually took the time to write letters to the different groups out there that were, following the Nembutsu teachings to clarify things that Shinran said. And many times he actually shared Shinran's direct words that he had recorded himself. So I would like to begin this message sharing with you a section of one of those letters. And these are the words of Shinran Shonin. So let me share my screen for you so you can see it. And would you please put your hands together and join me in Gasho as I recite this passage. As for me, I simply accept and entrust myself to what my revered teacher told me. Just say the Nembutsu and be saved by Amida. Nothing else is involved. I have no idea whether the Nembutsu is truly the seed for my being born in the Pure Land, or whether it is the karmic act for which I must fall into hell. Should I have been deceived by Master Honen and saying the Nembutsu were to fall into hell, even then, I would have no regrets. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandots, 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 Namandots. That's a pretty powerful statement, isn't it? Even saying that the karmic act of saying the Nembutsu, which Shinran felt is the seed for him being born in the Pure Land, even if it led him to hell, he would have no regrets. Such was his devotion and reliance on the Nembutsu to lead him to nirvana, to become a Buddha himself after passing away. This was really important to Shinran. And in this passage, he actually talks about the Nembutsu being a seed. And when we think about seeds, we plant them in the ground and they grow. And if we're lucky, especially here in Phoenix during the summertime, they'll grow and become beautiful flowers or fruits or vegetables or trees, but we never know. But for Shinran, he was determined and completely dedicated to living a life in Nembutsu and recognizing that seed was very important to him. So when we think about seeds and we think about growing, one of the flowers that is associated very much with Buddhism are lotus flowers. In fact, you can see lotus flowers typically underneath statues of the Buddha. The Buddha may be sitting or standing, but it's on a lotus flower. And that's to be recognized as a symbol of enlightenment. So why do we see it that way? Well, lotus flowers are very special. They don't just grow in the ground. They have to actually grow in a muddy pool of water that usually is kind of smelly and rank and just gross. But the seed, as it lies dormant there, is actually in the process of transforming into something beautiful. And as its stem grows in the muddy base and eventually makes its way above the muddy water itself, it blooms into something truly beautiful. And so in Buddhism, the lotus flower is actually a symbol of enlightenment. And it really makes me think about our own lives, because here we are stuck in this Saha world. This world is suffering and dissatisfaction and things that happen that don't go our way. You could say it's kind of muddy. Even so, though, we're growing and we're learning, and we do eventually bloom. But when it comes to realizing ultimate spiritual liberation, reaching the Pure Land, entering nirvana, becoming a Buddha, we need something else to help us out with that. We need something to nurture the seed that's in us, and that is the Nembutsu. So a couple of years ago, actually summer 2019, I had an opportunity to visit Japan. And one of the things that I noticed while I was there was that it was not uncommon to find lotus plants growing around temples. In fact, over my shoulder here is a temple. I'll move a little bit so you can see it better. This temple is known as Byodo-in. It's the Phoenix Temple in Japan. And you can see on the day that I visited there, when I took this photo, it was rainy. And yet, surrounding the temple and all these little ponds were lotus flowers. It was really pretty. I also visited a couple of other places when I was there, but I always looked for the lotus blossom near temples, and I actually took a few photos. So I wanted to show you 3 of these pictures real quick. So let me share again. So this is a photograph of a lotus plant that's actually in a pot. And even though you can't see the blossom itself, one of the things I thought was truly beautiful is you can see this little puddle of water in the center. And I just thought it was really pretty when I took this photo. So not all lotus plants need to grow in a pond, but this one's in a potted plant. And then here is another photograph of a lotus blossom coming out, rising, and it's in the process of blooming. You can see a couple of other buds getting ready to bloom behind it. Very pretty. And then this is a picture of a lotus blossom fully in bloom. And if you notice in the center, there's a little yellow object. It has holes around it. That is actually the seed pod. So I just thought it was truly fascinating. This is probably one of my most favorite pictures that I took while I was in Japan. So those are some pictures I wanted to share with you. And I now want to actually share a story with you that I ran across about lotus seeds. And just to give you a little context of this story, it was written from the viewpoint of a young girl, probably a teenage girl, whose family had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam. And she's sharing a story about her grandmother and her family. And I just found it very interesting, and I hope you'll enjoy it as well. And just also to share, growing up in the 1980s while I was going to high school, I had a number of friends whose families had immigrated over from Vietnam just a few years before that. And some of them did share their stories with me. And I'm always amazed at the lengths that immigrants will take to come to, this land of freedom, how much, they value our country and what it stands for. And one of the main things that it stands for is the opportunity to progress in life, to practice religion, to share, your voice. And this is what drives a lot of people to our country. And so, when I think back about my friends and their journey, it's just absolutely incredible. And reading this book that I'm going to share with you actually brought those memories back. And I'm so grateful for the many people who have added such richness to our society by, taking the difficult journey to come here. And that also includes the pioneers of our own tradition who came to the United States and called for ministers to come and share the Dharma. And, the Arizona Buddhist Temple is actually a direct recipient of those efforts. So it also makes me very grateful that, the pioneers of our temple came here and worked through all the difficulties and challenges that they encountered through their lives while they were here, including internment and camps during World War II, so that we can continue to listen to the Dharma today. So let me go ahead and share this book with you. And this book is titled The Lotus Seed. And it's written by Sherry Garland, and it's illustrated by Tatsuro Kyuchi. So let me go ahead and get the book started. And I'm going to share some pictures with you on screen. Oh, and one other thing to share. Because this story actually talks about her from her grandmother's point of view, it starts when her grandma's a very little girl. And she was alive during the time of the last emperor of Vietnam, who stepped down from the throne in 1954. So let me go ahead and share the story of the Lotus Seed. My grandmother saw the emperor cry the day he lost his golden dragon throne. She wanted something to remember him by, so she snuck down to the silent palace near the river of perfumes and plucked a seed from a lotus pond that rattled in the imperial garden. She hid the seed in a special place under the family altar, wrapped in a piece of silk from the owl dye she wore that day. I imagine something like a kimono or yukata. Whenever she felt sad or lonely, she took out the seed and thought of the brave young emperor. And when she married a young man chosen by her parents, she carried the seed inside her pocket for good luck, long life, and many children. When her husband marched off to war, she raised her children alone. One day, bombs fell all around, and soldiers clamored door to door. She took the time to grab the seed, but left her mother of pearl hair combs lying on the floor. This was how precious the seed was to her. One terrible day, her family scrambled into a crowded boat and set out on a stormy sea. Bea watched the mountains and the waving palms slowly fade away. She held the seed in her shaking fingers and silently said goodbye. So even as she was leaving her homeland that she had grown up in, where she had raised her children in, her seed was so precious to her that she took it with her on that boat. She arrived in a strange new land with blinking lights and speeding cars and towering buildings that scraped the sky and a language she didn't understand. And I think this is an experience that many people who come to this country have themselves. It's like entering into an alien world, an entirely different planet, something that we take for granted, but to them it seemed very odd and strange indeed. And I always am impressed of how brave people are who come here. Returning to the story. She worked many years, day and night, and so did her children and her sisters and her cousins too, living together in one big house, like a lot of immigrants. Last summer, my little brother found this special seed and asked questions again and again. He'd never seen a lotus bloom or an emperor on a golden dragon throne. So one night, he stole the seed from beneath the family altar and planted it in a pool of mud somewhere near Bea's onion patch. Bea cried and cried when she found out the seed was gone. She didn't eat, she didn't sleep, and my silly brother forgot what spot of earth held the seed. So their grandmother had taken the seed, had it throughout her whole life, survived war, survived an ocean journey to come to a strange land, and now it was gone. Then one day in spring, my grandmother shouted, and we all ran to the garden and saw a beautiful pink lotus unfurling its petals, so creamy and soft. It is the flower of life and hope, my grandmother said. No matter how ugly the mud or how long the seed lies dormant, the bloom will be beautiful. It is the flower of my country. You can imagine how happy she was to see it bloom. When the lotus blossom faded and turned into a pod, Bea gave each of her grandchildren a seed to remember her by, and she kept one for herself to remember the emperor by. I wrapped my seed in a piece of silk and hid it in a special place. Someday I will plant and give the seeds to my own children and tell them about the day my grandmother saw the emperor cry. So I hope you enjoyed that story. And the way that it ended about how she gave the seeds to her family makes me think about the Nembutsu teachings here in the United States and how fortunate we all are that we've been able to take seeds ourselves, whether we were born with them. And what I mean by that is born with the Nembutsu, the seed of the Nembutsu, whether we heard it whispered to us as a child when we were growing up, or whether we encountered it the first time we came to a temple, or perhaps watched a YouTube video of a Dharma message, but how we take those seeds and we pass them on to others so that they too can receive the Nembutsu in their lives. And by saying Namo Amida Butsu, be born in the Pure Land and become Buddhas themselves. So I really appreciate you listening to my Dharma message today. I hope that you all are having a wonderful summer and that you're staying cool and staying healthy. And I can't wait until we can join each other again and say the Nembutsu together as a Sangha. So will you please join me as we end today by placing your hands together in Gassho, and we'll recite the Nembutsu together. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. Thank you, everyone. Stay well and have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.